Hello everyone, and welcome to Dark Aspects, an ongoing web series where I pick an innocuous-looking video game, rated E for everyone, to try and uncover any questionable content that may be lurking beneath the surface. This particular video is the sixth and final part in my complete analysis of Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. I recommend watching the others first, but if you don't care or want a refresher, here is a list of pretty much all of what I've talked about thus far. I'm now going to be adding to that list with topics including demonic possession of an iconic character, unsettling fourth wall breaks, existential horror, eternal servitude and enslavement, and more. We last left off with Tech, exploding along with the X-Naut's top secret base of operations on the moon. Tech helped Peach, and by extension, Mario, discover the X-Naut leader, Sir Grodus' plan to use her as a living vessel for the Shadow Queen. That lovely demon sealed away 1,000 years ago by 4 legendary heroes in the ruins of the ancient city lying directly underneath modern Rogueport. She sleeps deep within her royal dwelling, the Palace of Shadow, trapped in a tomb far below her throne room. And the only way to access this incredibly uninviting place is to go right through the front door. That front door just happens to be the Thousand-Year Door that you may or may not have heard of. And the keys to unlock it are the 7 crystal stars Mario has spent this entire game traveling all over the map collecting. That is to say, this thing isn't easy to open sesame, tofu. But with the diamond, emerald, gold, ruby, sapphire, garnet, and crystal stars in hand, now is the time to break the barrier. The ancient walls protecting the sacred entryway crack, and a dark energy calls out from within. But, why are we opening the entrance to the Palace of Shadow? Now that we know an unspeakable demon is locked in there, shouldn't Mario just destroy the crystal stars so nobody can revive her? Well, Professor Frankly rushes the team immediately after they step out of the teleporter room to inform us that he saw Grodus somehow slipping through the sealed door with Peach in tow, using some special method to pass through. This all turns out to be a lie though, as this Professor Frankly is an imposter. Right now, you're looking at Dupless, who has thankfully become quite the recurring character following his body-snatching shenanigans in Chapter 4. The real Professor Frankly is said to be passed out somewhere, implying he was either judo-chopped or knocked out with the Mario Universe equivalent to chloroform, which is a sleepy sheep, silly. So no, Grodus doesn't have a giant underground drill. He and the 3 shadows, Beldum, Marilyn, and Dupless, simply sneak in after Mario. And the big bad goes on ahead while Vivian's sisters and her replacement distract our heroes. If you don't have Vivian out when you do catch up to them, be sure to swap out your current partner so she gets a chance to punish Beldum. Do it for her, and for Dupless, who now gets the brunt of Beldum's abuse as her fill-in. I'd laugh and say that's what you get, but I kinda feel bad for the guy. Like this seemingly impregnable barrier, the inner walls of Her Highness's palace are riddled with riddles to keep one from breaching the inner sanctum. But you won't simply get turned around here. It's dangerous, too. Deadly traps wait in every room. There's spike maces, fire bars, bombshell, bill blasters, dry bones, plus a guard dog dragon that looms large here. Gloomtail, Hooktail's older, scarier, and stronger brother, but not the scariest and strongest of the 3 dragon siblings. Whichever partner character the player has out at the time will pull a gun soldier from Sonic Adventure 2 and mistake him for the likes of his little sister.
Now I know what's going on. The military has mistaken me for the likes of you.
Saying something to the effect of, "Didn't we defeat you?" Which of course enrages the dragon with Shadow the Hedgehog's color palette. "I will avenge my sister by taking your lives, and then gnawing on your bones." Yeah, swap out sister with Maria and Shadow would say the same thing. Except maybe he'd say, "I'll crush your bones into dust" or something rather than gnawing on them. Regardless, the fated fight commences, and if you're overleveled like I was, then the fiend falls fast. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the atmosphere of this place is perfectly unsettling. The palace makes a striking, overwhelming first impression. It's grimly beautiful and richly mansion-esque with a gothic rose motif. It's imposingly enormous, with long, lonely corridors and stairways that lead to this enchanting yet ominous feeling underground lake. Goombella describes this mystical space as being cold and icky, like time stopped here. And I think that feeling effectively comes through. Despite that, I would love to tour the eerie yet peaceful palace courtyard. Well, after the Shadow Queen is eradicated. Another place within this cursed palace I'd love to check out in person is this tower, which adds another layer of mystery and ambiance. In addition to the roses, the interior design is decorated with a starry astronomical theme, complete with a solar system planetarium crowning the top floor. The legend of the crystal stars and the Shadow Queen being tied to the cosmos gives Her Majesty an unshakable Lovecraftian vibe that works to both build up the horror that awaits when confronting her, and adds room for speculation in terms of this game's already very well established lore. You see, in each of the puzzle rooms, there's something written on the wall that Goombella speculates is related to the history of the tower itself. Every one of these plaques is a riddle made up of 3 lines, with 2 giving a hint about how to solve the puzzle, but a third separate line that makes up a poem when compared to the other outliers in every room. What exactly this cryptic message means is still up for interpretation, but it seems to be a prophecy of Vivian's people, the ancient Shadow race we know at least 4 members of. If you'd like to take a stab at the greater implications of this text within the world of TTYD, let's discuss it further in the comments. While I do touch upon speculation sometimes, I really do just like to give you all the facts in these videos. But trudging along, I must say the penultimate final boss is interesting because it's a back-to-back face-off between the new antagonist and the old one. You first fight Grotus himself, not his lackey Lord Crump, after he thanks you for gathering all of the crystal stars and opening the 1000-year door for him, then threatening to send Mario to oblivion.
I have seen the gates of oblivion, beyond which no waking eye may see.
Mario's an Elder Scrolls fan, but he does prefer Skyrim because he's the voice of Parthenax.
What brings you to the throat of the world?
So, to avoid oblivion, he fights with extra vigor and cracks the X-Naut leader's glass dome. Knowing he can't win without cheating, Grotus plays the coward's card and threatens to take Peach's life if he comes any closer. The tables have now turned, and Mario's shot with 2 consecutive bursts of lightning. Peach screams his name when he's attacked the first time, and then quietly mutters it as if she's given up hope for his safety. You can actually choose to have him attack here, even after the hostage warning, and Grotus darkly gears up to finish her off instead of Mario. However, the princess remains unharmed for now, and it's all thanks to the boisterous, bumbling Bowser bruising this busted-up baddie with his big booty. Yes, he just circumvented the entire final dungeon and crashed through the ceiling. In the confusion of their battle, the squished flat Grotus collects himself and sneaks off with the princess down to the Shadow Queen's crypt, the deepest room in the Palace of Shadow with some seriously nasty vibes, helped by haunting background noise made up of foreboding, echoey sounds. Entering this candlelit crypt is the point of no return. Peach lies on the cold floor in front of the Queen's stone coffin, behind a cackling Grotus whose twisted dream of resurrecting an unspeakable horror is about to become a reality. This tomb holds the soul of the wielder of destruction, the most powerful witch in millennia brought back to life by the crystal stars she's bound by fate to. The normal red flame candles extinguish and relight with a ghastly purple glow, and the ancient ruler rises once again. She pulls a Nosferatu and reaches out over the town, not with just one shadow hand, but many, blanketing Rogueport in an oppressive darkness that'd surprise even the naturally gloomy inhabitants of Twilight Town. A world-shaking earthquake and shockwaves spreads across the land, negatively affecting every single person we've met throughout this journey. At least everyone we've met who's not evil. A terrible sense of dread is universally felt as the unthinkable demon of legend awakens, now reborn using Princess Peach as a living vessel. Her soul is not fully accustomed to this body yet, but she still possesses extraordinary power, enough to supposedly vanquish who was once our greatest threat with a couple of magic strikes when he tries to command her. With glowing red eyes, she calls him a slave and seemingly ends his life, which is of course shocking for a Mario game, even with every dark aspect that's already come before it. Beldum bounces back into the picture to greet the Queen, revealing that Grotus really was a pseudo-antagonist, and that she was responsible for all of the events leading to this moment, from the very beginning, when she discovered the pure-hearted princess and gave her the magical map, spreading rumors of a great treasure beyond the palace door. Her royal wickedness then questions who the other beings are who dare stand before her, and offers them a chance to join her. The player can actually make Mario agree to become her servant, to the horror of your selected party member. So here's a little showcase of all the responses I recorded for this occasion. Defying her to actually progress the game, as your partner telling Mario to not think of the creature who stands before you as Peach, to help as you knock around the brains of his love interest, who I can't stress enough is possessed by a literal demon in a Mario game. When she's sick of losing HP, her royalty reveals her true form, a giant coily monster invincible to any and all damage. She sickly pulls the crowd watching into the shadows with her countless hands and presumably absorbs their essence, recovering the slight damage she'd taken earlier. It seems like a checkmate, but similar to the Peach Beam in the original Paper Mario against a Star Rod-powered Bowser, the Crystal Stars react by showing themselves to everyone we've helped along this adventure, to collect their feelings of hope and project their shouts of determination, in a sequence that plays out just like Paula praying to everyone throughout Eagleland and beyond during the fight against the incomprehensible final boss in Earthbound. Their wishes and positive energy pierce the Queen's impenetrable shield as Peach's soul briefly takes control, restoring Mario and friends' strength with her magic Peachy healing powers. Of course, after an intense battle, these so-called lesser beings best the old witch, and with an ear-shattering screech she returns to the dust of the earth, leaving Peach unharmed, at least physically. There's nothing implying that she doesn't remember the terror of what just transpired. Oh, and frankly finds the real legendary treasure chest, which contains a dried shroom. Okay, that's pretty funny. I always thought it was some one-of-a-kind, super ultra deluxe mushroom when it was fresh 1,000 years ago. I already criticized the epilogue and its backpedaling on characters who already died and should have stayed dead, but I have a problem with one part of this happy ending, even more so than the writer's fear of death. And that is Beldum, of all characters, getting another chance. Vivian goes back to hang out with her, because apparently she's not into evil anymore now that the Shadow Queen has been defeated. She promised Goombella that she would never be mean to Vivian ever again, so that's that. They'll apparently live peacefully from now on. The Switch version made this a tiny bit better to stomach, removing Goombella's line of, "family is important after all," which is true if they aren't manipulative and abusive villains, but this just doesn't sit right with me. If the storytellers wanted any kind of redemption for Beldum, there needed to have been a serious apology arc during the postgame. You can't just tell and not show me that she's no longer evil. This ending feels to me like the writers were made to hurriedly patch up anything that could potentially upset a child who will think about these characters after the credits roll. Vivian did not need to reconcile with Beldum. She has a found family now, who love and support her unconditionally. It's unbelievable that the 1,000-plus-year-old beldam would completely change her ways and genuinely respect her sister now. But even without knowing these characters specifically, it's unrealistic, naive, and, depending on the situation, dangerous to support the idea that family should always be forgiven no matter the circumstance just because they're family. I'm glad the Switch version at least changed that line. If you couldn't tell, I really don't like that epilogue, but I still think that overall this game has one of the better Mario stories for sure. It's not all bad, I really do like where the other characters wind up. I mean, the Yoshi kid getting back into the Glitz Pit arena under the name The Great Gonzalez Jr. is awesome. And Dupless becoming a stage actor playing Mario in a retelling of the game's events is genius. That being said, all's well that ends well, I guess.
All's well that ends well, right?
The main story is over, but there are just a couple of elements I wanted to touch upon, relating to optional content and that much welcomed post-game, following the original Paper Mario's complete lack of one. First up is the infamous Pit of 100 trials closed off to the public, but historically used by the Shadow Queen to throw anyone she disfavored into. It's a series of 100 rooms that lead further and further underground, with rewards and an opportunity to escape only once every 10 floors. The deeper you descend, the gloomier the rooms look, and the tougher the enemies. You cannot save your game at any point while down here, which had much more dire consequences on GameCube because in that version, there is no option to retry a floor if you get a game over. This pit haunted me as a kid. I genuinely did get close to the bottom floor a few times, but made one careless mistake and lost all that progress. I also distinctly remember instances of it not being my fault for a few attempts. One time in a sudden rainstorm, the power went out. And in another instance, I got a tragic "this could not be read" error that discouraged me from trying again. So I actually only completed it for the first time when I replayed the game later as a teenager. My heart raced years later when I first encountered Bonetail, the eldest dragon sibling, but I persevered and conquered a childhood challenge I could never complete then. Now, as an adult playing this remake, I was still on the edge of my seat during that fight because I did not know you could now simply restart the floor you're currently on after losing all HP. I'm honestly glad I wasn't aware because that tension was exciting for me. But whatever you think about the developers easing up on what once seemed like an insurmountable challenge to my young self, Bonetail still rules as a hidden super boss. Emerging from the shadows, this undead skeleton dragon greets its unwelcomed guests not with intelligible speech, but a chilling roar.
Do the roar! An ogre only roars when he's angry.
With 200 max HP and healing capabilities, plus higher power attacks like Frost and Poison Breath, Bonetail is harder than the final boss. Defeating her is still probably the toughest feat in the game, considering that you had to battle through all of the other floors to get here too, but she can no longer be considered the single toughest boss character. That crown goes to either Prince Mush or Whacka. The wrath of this cute blue mole who finally gets to exact revenge for all of the players who have abused him to harvest his precious Whacka bumps in each respective game. I was sadly spoiled about Whacka as a secret remake exclusive boss. I didn't see a picture of him though, so I imagined the little guy climbing out of the ground, revealing an incredibly muscly body or something, so I laughed when there wasn't another form for him. You really just fight this small blue dude as is. But hey, those Whacka bumps sure do pack a punch when thrown as projectiles. This Whacka can be fought again and again so long as you're willing to journey back through the depths. I think it's a great addition, but the fact that he doesn't disappear forever like the original and actually enjoys fighting Mario kind of defeats the purpose of this character, at least for me. I know it's not supposed to be super deep or anything, but it does raise moral questions. Are you willing to extort this poor creature for incredible healing items? Will you push it so far that you'll totally send him away on the save file? It feels very Undertale-like to me, but now there isn't a permanent consequence to antagonizing him for personal gain. You don't have to feel bad for whacking Whacka one too many times anymore, because you're rewarded more for it. It is funny looking at these three bosses side by side, knowing the big bone dragon isn't the deadliest one. In terms of sheer strength, the Toad and this tiny blue blob reign supreme. But what about the scariest presence in the game? No, it's not a WD Gastor situation. This instead brings us to the Mr. Rossetti-esque NPC named Lucky. Lucky the Babam, who runs the Happy Lucky Lottery. And like Whacka, he's happy, unless you mess with him. If you're a dirty cheater and fess up to your deplorable ways of rigging the system he so lovingly set up for everyone to enjoy, and or unhealthily obsess over in the case of this Dugan with a gambling addiction, his true colors will show. But yes, like time traveling in Animal Crossing before it, the game can punish you for tampering with the system clock it relies on to work as intended. The Happy Lucky Lottery is designed to give the impression that winning numbers are randomly generated, even though it's actually dependent on how many days have passed since you purchased a ticket. It's kind of cruel if someone plays the game daily while understandably assuming it's chance-based. But on the other hand, very exploitable, as you're guaranteed to win first prize with any ticket when about one real-life year passes. This is where messing around with the clock gets fun. On Switch, you don't even have to close out of the game. Just press the home button and change the date while the app's suspended, then waltz right back in as if Mario's been standing here for 12 months straight.
I'm tired.
You can do this as many times as you'd like. The game has no way of telling when you jump ahead in time. However, going backwards is where everything gets fuzzy. Lucky won't look so happy-go-lucky anymore, as a speech bubble with that classic black cartoon squiggle hints that something is very wrong. Lucky is so upset that after much hesitation, he'll report with a sullen look that there has been some foul play in the lottery. He knows the clock was tampered with, but admitting to the sins crawling on your back does not net you any points of honesty. Instead, Lucky will turn those sad eyes into a look of unbridled rage. He starts chanting repeatedly as the earth shakes around him. Mario begins flailing and the camera zooms in slowly. Unlucky, 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 boom, he starts saying, looking distraught again as if you've sent him down a path he can't recover from. Never trust another person. Can't take this, can't take this, can't take this, no. Not happy, not happy, not happy. Can't take this anymore. Just leave me alone, boom. He's about to explode and fluctuate between sadness and primal anger. Suddenly, when the screen zoomed in all the way, he screams, "That's it! No more Happy Lucky Lottery ever! Boom!" and starts flashing red while the screen turns white. He then blacks out like the power being shut off on an old television, or the system itself being reset. You have to swear that you'll never do it again, or else he will end this game. Just what kind of fourth wall breaking abilities does this Babam possess? Is he really talking about just ending the game of Happy Lucky Lottery? Or is this meta, and he's threatening to end the game of Paper Mario the Thousand-Year Door? Is he aware of others who have the ability to time travel, like a certain comical skeleton? I'm mostly joking, but I'm just going to headcanon that this one NPC has more power than anyone else in the game world, but unfortunately only ever threatens to use it, as saying "you'll cheat again" simply repeats this sequence with no changes. Nevertheless, this entire section feels like one of those anti-piracy warning messages in games, especially the overly scary fake ones created by fans, or a cliché-haunted game creepypasta. I'm happy to report that this is real though, and could certainly frighten anybody who just thought they were clever and gamed the system to win a first place prize. The last bit of optional dialogue I have to mention is Paper Luigi, or Super Luigi as it's called in Universe. That is, before New Super Luigi U. Unlike this game's predecessor, where a jealous little bro stayed cooped up inside while his older sibling saved the day, Luigi in the sequel game went on an entirely separate adventure with as many twists and turns as Mario's. What's amusing is that Luigi appears to be telling the story in a very different light to what actually happened, though, by omitting some crucial details. For example, he hurled his blooper partner Bluey here at a boss character and claims to have aimed the shot perfectly, landing a bullseye and toppling their foe over. Bluey himself reveals that Luigi did try to throw him, but tripped and accidentally sent his aquatic friend straight into a pool of hot lava, burning him to a crisp. Bluey is only sticking around because he hates Luigi and wants to make him pay somehow. Same goes for Torque, a buzzy beetle auto technician who lent Luigi a cart that he totaled immediately, costing him 5,000 coins in repairs. I'm mainly mentioning Luigi's tall tales and books though because he's had a couple of eye-opening encounters. In Luigi's travels, he visited a village ruled by a giant snake named Hizza. Not to be confused with Triclyde, it's this guy who's only got 2 heads, and who forced the mayor to offer up his own daughter as a sacrifice. The heroic Luigi took her place, impersonating the fine lady by killing it as a drag icon, which isn't the first or last time this has happened. Jerry is also no longer insensitive to this behavior in the Switch remake. Instead of being horrified at Luigi's outfit, he complains about the green guy's clumsiness. Anyway, Luigi managed to defeat this oversized earthworm and free the girl, but indirectly declined a marriage proposal by sneaking off into the night. Then, later on in his quest, as he explored the rapturous ruins, Luigi described a chamber that was pure white inside, so much so that he couldn't tell where the floor became walls. This is where Luigi found Screamy, this unique NPC with no other counterpart in the game, who is thought to be an early version of Smorg because of these unused enemies with file names related to Smorg in the game's data. There's also a mysterious young boy named Cranberry who awaited a child of fate. He was the last of an ancient race called the Luffs, guarding a piece of the marvelous compass Luigi had been slowly assembling. The compass possesses the power to see into the future, so the ancient Luff Empire apparently used that power to rule much of the world. However, because of their greed, they were cursed by the compass and their empire collapsed. Only a worthy hero, i.e. Luigi, can take this last compass piece, so when he accepted it, the boy in the ruins completely vanished into a blank nothingness. On that rather morbid note, we can now close the book of Super Luigi and the greater book that contains the story of this overall game. Thank you everybody for watching Dark Aspects of the Thousand Year Door. This was another one of those projects that takes much longer than you'd think to complete. This is one of my favorite video games of all time, so I really wanted to do it justice, and I'm grateful that a new generation of players get to experience this surprising and story-heavy take on Mario. If there's anything you feel that I neglected to talk about or would like to discuss more in the comments, there's a good chance I will see it and respond. Special thanks to my PK Rockin' patrons, Aaron Cargyle and Brian Bauer. A very special thank you to my PK Love supporters, Dat Berry, Sadib Khan, Katie, Pangake, Janssen, Kumatora, Kathleen, Jennifer, Brian, and Susan. I hope to see you all next time on Dark Aspects.